morning, we'll look at how women are doing in business through PNA Grant Thornton's 2022 Women in Business Report. PNA Grant Thornton Chairperson Marivic Españo, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Hi, Marivic. Happy Women's Month.
Hello, Mimi. Good morning. Good morning to everyone, to all our viewers.
Good morning. So we know, let's start with the report, the findings. We know that the pandemic has had a devastating effect on women in the workplace 2 years in, and millions of women are still missing from the workforce. But is your survey seeing signs of progress? Why don't you walk us through the key findings?
Okay, thank you, Mimi. So the research study conducted by Grant Thornton, which we're doing every year, shows that globally there was actually an increase in the percentage of women in senior management position. In 2022, there's a slight increase of 32% coming from 31%. In Asia, we are now at 30%, and that's a good news because in the past, Asia Pacific region would be the region that is below the 30% benchmark. In the Philippines, though, we see a slight decline. In the previous year, we had 48% of our senior leaders women, but this year, based on the survey, which was conducted from October to November 2021, that went down to 39%. Although there was a slight decrease globally, the Philippines continued to be in the top 4 of the countries that have women, a significant number of women in senior management roles. So over the past 3 years, the Philippines is averaging at 43%. That's not a bad number considering the percentage just globally.
Marivic, I'm curious, does the survey also cover women who say their career has taken a setback in the past year, or that their salary is lower than a year, 2 years ago because of the pandemic?
There was no specific data on that. But when I compare the numbers with what we see locally, I think the decline in the percentage of women in senior management role is influenced a lot by the situation that women faced during the pandemic. As you would know, in the Philippines, we've been quite fortunate to have a very strong support group for working women. We have our, family relatives staying with us at home. We have our kasambahay. And during the pandemic, we saw that many women, many families lost their kasambahay because of the need to go back to the provinces. So that, I think, affected the situation of women. Secondly, for the past 2 years, our children are really studying from home. And the challenge of helping our children cope with this kind of new educational system really puts pressure on women. So while they may be working at home virtually, they are taking care of their families and have become teachers for their children.
I was going to ask Marivic, because the work from home setup, the flexible work setup, it looks great on paper. It gave women the opportunity to do their work while taking care of the family in one space. But it looks great on paper, but was it really beneficial to women, or did it end up demanding even more from women?
Well, I would say that if you consider the situation that we were in the past 2 years, it was good for women because they were able to, do their work at home while taking care of the family. So just imagine if the flexible work arrangements were not present, then, you would have a higher number of women probably resigning from their work. I agree with you, though, that it added pressure because of the local situation that we have. As I mentioned, our children have to study virtually. In our families, the internet infrastructure may not be that strong. So just imagine in your family, 3 or 4 children using the internet, while at the same time the parents are also working. So it has its positive and negative. But I'm sure that if we would be able to continue with this kind of setup, this work practices moving forward after the pandemic, it would be a better situation for women.
Marivic, the presentation actually opens with this data saying that 57% of mid-market companies globally are concerned about a talent shortage. First of all, how would you define mid-market companies? And secondly, is the shortage more pronounced among women than in men?
If we look at the, first of all, totally agree with you. I think the past 2 years have really been defined by the shortage of talent. They're saying it's really the year of resignations, not just in the Philippines, but it's actually a global development. I think the mental stress of working in this kind of environment has put its toll on people, and we're seeing a lot of resignations. In terms of ability to cope with these resignations, I think companies are really adopting flexible work arrangements to encourage, our employees to remain in their work and to continuously engagement despite the remote work arrangements that we have. I believe that kind of a situation would somehow alleviate the shortage in talent.
Because we did hear about, the shortage, the war for talent in the U.S. People were resigning left and right because they didn't need to work, because they were getting a paycheck from government. But it didn't seem to be the case here in the Philippines, because here, companies were cutting jobs. People wanted to hang on to what jobs they have left as long as they can. But when you talk about shortage in talent, is it more pronounced among women, or is it equal among men and women?
I would like to think that it's equal among female and male workers. And maybe one has to consider that when we talk about the shortage in talent in the Philippines, we are affected by the global development. So like what's happening in the US or Europe. So that actually, that shortage created opportunities for a worker in the Philippines. So, because work can be done remotely, we do see a lot of people, going after those opportunities and resigning from their local jobs. So if they do not have to travel at this point to those countries to be able to get those work.
And Marivic, you touched on this earlier, the rankings. The Philippines seems to be doing well in terms of global and regional rankings. You did say 39% in terms of the number of women in senior management positions. The Philippines is behind Malaysia, Turkey, and South Africa, but ahead of Indonesia, Thailand, even Spain. 6% in terms of number of businesses with no women in senior management, and 3% in terms of businesses with just one woman in senior management. We seem to be doing well than many other advanced economies. Is that a surprise?
Not really. That has been the trend shown by our surveys or by our research every year. I think in the Philippines, women are very fortunate to have, as I said, this very strong support coming from their families, from their spouses, from their children. In the workplace, companies are really adopting best practices to continuously consider women in the opportunities that are available, and are engaging women and employees in general in different ways. I think that is really very important if the companies would like to make sure that they're able to tap the best talent available.
I'm sure you also monitor companies here in the Philippines. What have been some of the key appointments of women in the C-suite in the past 2 years that concretely show we are improving and that the workplace is indeed better for women today? Can you cite some interesting appointments?
I can't cite any specific appointment, but I know that in the women organizations that I'm part of, as well as in MAP and FINEX, as well as the Women Business Council, we can hear very positive news about women leaders becoming members of the board of directors of listed companies. So that's a very good development. For one, there was recent announcement that a Filipino was chosen as the chairperson of a leading insurance company in the Philippines. So those are really, really very positive developments. I think in the Philippines, if you look at the position held by women, most the areas where women really excel are in human resources and financial CFO positions. And we continue to see this trend in the research.
And we'd like to note as well, one of the key appointments I remember in the last 2 years is Shell Philippines. Their new CEO is actually a woman, a Filipina from Cesar Romero. He passed on the baton to Miss Lorelei Kiambao Ociel, and we're going to have her next month. So very exciting there. And you did touch on this, something interesting that you said, Marivic, that most of the positions held by women in senior level would be CFO and HR heads. Interesting to note that for 2022, majority of women in management positions, 41% say they're holding the CFO position, versus in 2021, where majority of the women said they were in HR position. Is that a good thing that more women are in CFO position versus HR?
It is a positive development. I think it is a recognition that, you know, women have different kind of skills. It's not just on human resources. And we're seeing that is also a recognition that the women in the Philippines have a good perspective of the different concerns of businesses, which is very relevant for a CFO position.
And final question, women may be in the C-suite, but are they paid equally? Are they paid the same as men who hold the same position? Talk to us about the gender pay gap here in the Philippines.
Well, in the Philippines, that is, I believe that is not an issue. Because of the talent, there are so many women who are equally as good as the male executives. So it is not seen as a significant concern. Probably in certain industries that might be true, maybe in the technology sector, but only because there's still a few women in that sector.
All right. On that note, Marivic, thank you so much for joining us, and happy Women's Month.
Happy Women's Month too, Mimi.
All right.